What's up, everybody? Jared and Cory here for a special late night episode of Teach Me Pokemon. And if you can see our screen right now, you know what we are about to talking about. We're going to have an episode coming out later this week that's going to be full world's coverage. But since the hosts clearly of Pokemon are not allowed to talk about this, that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about this, one of the craziest things I've ever seen at a tournament. And if you don't know what we're talking about, Cory, walk us through what the heck we're about to talk through.
Yeah, we were trying to compare it, you and I, to other sporting events or just other obviously Pokemon events, and it's just not. It's unmatched, truly, at the level of where this was, with the amount of prize money on the line. Next season being just so much harder to qualify for Worlds, and obviously a player like Ian Robb, who we're going to talk about, plays a lot and probably can finish in the top 125. But to be top 4, you don't have any of that pressure moving into next year. So all of this was on the line. And, also shout out to Marco Cifuentes, who I had on my fantasy team, I'd like to say. I got the name just a little wrong, Jared. I meant to say Fernando. Can I have a redo?
No redos. No redos. But walk us through.
No redos. So he comes into this top 8 on Iron Thorns, who, being on the stall committee here, like I am, the control stall. Iron Thorns, they're invited to our meetings. So, and the thing we talk about is player hate. Like, you go into a match, you flip over Iron Thorns or you flip over Snorlax, and you just get the eye rolls. Back in the day, it was Sylveon. Poor Sylveon. So they get into this match, top 8, Ian Robb on arguably the number 1 deck in the form, the best deck at Worlds, Regidrago. There were 4 of them, Jared, in top 8. And Ian Robb is a great player. He's piloting this deck, and he gets the Cifuentes matchup in top 8. And honestly, Drago can work around the Iron Thorns pretty well. You can't Legacy, you can't Ogre Pond. Like, you can't do some of these things. You can't do Teal Mask, but you still can kind of maneuver. And Ian has, he has 1 copy of Canceling Cologne in the deck too, so you can still play that and pivot. And watching these 2 games, it only lasted 2 games because Cifuentes, Fernando just didn't really get going. And it seemed like Ian just had the pivots, great counterplay with the Squawkabilly, right? Like, that became the play against Iron Thorns was Squawk, do 20 damage, attach 2 energy from the discard pile, and just load up your Regidragos. And honestly, Jared, it was a pretty clean 2-0 by Ian Robb in that top 8 match. And I mean, I don't think anybody was mad about it. I think Fernando was happy with a top 8 at Worlds. I mean, we had his brother Marco on the podcast a while back. He talked about the Cifuentes family. Like, we know these guys they're great players, but top 8 is nothing to be ashamed of. And so the match ends. Ian gets a crazy sequence to end game 2. Just gets all the cards he needs to knock out the Iron Thorns. And it looked like, I remember watching it live, and I was telling you this. They put the camera on Ian. He looks to the crowd. He's excited, and then just gives the old gesture. We're just going to call it the gesture. And it seemed odd to me at the time. I remember watching it thinking, oh, man, I kind of know what that means. We've all seen The Hangover. There's infinite, we know what this is. And it was hard to tell, well, is this because Iron Thorns is just a pain in the butt and he just steamrolled it 2-0, so he's giving it to Iron Thorns? It can't, Fernando is a nice kid. I can't believe Fernando is saying bad things. But Ian he goes 2-0. He's moving into top 4 now, and he gives off a little see you later. But at the time, nothing happened, Jared, right? The match slip gets signed.
They interview him.
They interview him.
They interview him on stream.
They interview him. Chip, one of the announcers, is like, we're guaranteed 1 U.S. player in finals because it's Ian Robb versus Jesse Parker. We're guaranteed 1, and it was like, They just moved on with life. So that is pretty much the setup. There wasn't anything that happened during the match that would look like that Ian got frustrated by how Cifuentes was playing. So, there wasn't anything there that would have been like indicated Ian's given him like the whatever dude kind of at the end of it. Even beforehand, he took a nice picture with them. There's a selfie on stage of Ian Robb and Fernando. So everything seemed fine, but it was not fine afterwards. So, but that's basically it. I mean, is there anything else you wanted me to touch on?
I wanted to clarify for our listeners. This happened after game 2 was over. After the match was settled, it wasn't a 1-1 split, and this happened. It didn't seem overly like celebratory, like trying to be in Fernando's face. The rub here is purely what it came off and what it was interpreted as.
Yeah.
Is how. And I'm gonna what I'd like to do now, Cory, if you're okay, is I've been rummaging through the tournament playbook. Okay. And I'm going to bring up what I think this falls under, and I would love your opinion on this. Okay. So if you want to look this up for yourself, Pokemon they have a bunch of different things, but this is a 61-page Play Pokemon Tournament Rules Handbooks. This is
61 pages?
61 pages, and this is what they abide by at tournaments for all of the different rules. Things that you and I talk about, pace of plays, all these things. But if you go all the way down into the 40s, there is disqualifications. And there's many different ways that somebody can get disqualified. But if you get into page 49 at the end of 48 at minors, minor unsportsman conduct, major unsportsman conduct, and severe unsportsman.
Okay.
And this is the only thing. So this is... if you're looking at unsportsman code, again, this is page 49. It's 7.3.1.2 under the unsporting conduct code. The use of, it says severe unsporting conduct. Again, this is tiered. This is the worst. Demonstrates a blatant disregard for the Play Pokemon standards of conduct and actively contributes towards a disruption of a safe and family-friendly, remember those words, Cory, of a safe and family-friendly environment. Examples may include, and this is the only thing that I think this can fall under, the use of profanity, slurs, physical threats, or insults towards another attendee. Everything else under this he's not willfully lying to tournament staff. There's no assault, criminal activity, bribery, determining of the outcome of a match by a means, and there's no deliberate violation of the inclusion policy. I don't think he's trying to deliberately cause distress, but that to me is where the ruling comes from if you look through all of this, and they can kick him out of the tournament for that, and that is what happened.
Yeah, I mean, you go under the severe category, and you go into those wordings of like not a slur, but it's definitely an insinuation of something that is profane and not family friendly.
Sure.
And I know you're going to touch on that, but like when you go to the rule book, you're kind of like hands tied a little bit when we all know I saw some arguments on Twitter that, it could have been him rolling a dice or it could have been him fist pumping. And it's like, okay, let's be adults here. That's not what that was. It's just, it's not like, and if Ian, haven't heard his take on it, and I don't know in the moment when I'm sure when he was defending himself, he might have said, yeah, that's what it was. Or maybe he said, no, I wasn't doing it, whatever. But like, it felt like the way he smirked and smiled to the crowd, did the gesture, that he was giving off something that is not a family-friendly topic or thing or whatever.
Well, let's talk about this. And I'd like to play devil's advocate a little bit. And I want to touch on the family-friendly. Objectively, I don't think he did anything wrong. Objectively, you can't. This is an interpretive thing we're talking about here, right? Like, I don't disagree with what you said, but like, if you go and take the rule book, there's a couple of hand gestures that I can think of, but that one, it's like,
Yeah.
But then you take it to the other side and you're like, okay, so this is a subjective call, right, for the judges.
Yeah.
And that is where the family-friendly aspect and what Pokemon and the tournament people are going to defend. And
Yeah.
that's where Ian Robb, I think, is in the wrong on this is you can't get anywhere close to that, man. Like,
Yeah.
you just won the game and your excitement. You can't get anywhere near doing something like that. And I don't think they're wrong to call him, but I don't want this. This is a subjective call, not an objective call, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what would be objective. I'm going to explain. Well, I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and you tell me
Sure.
if it's subjective or objective. And I'm going to go back to how I led the top of this segment was people do not like these kind of decks, meaning Iron Thorns. They think it takes no skill, that they're trash, that I can't believe you're bringing this to the world stage, let alone top 8. And I think there is a sense of like, dude, screw you for playing this stupid 4 Iron Thorns like monstrosity of a deck because you're here just to frustrate all the decks that are trying to do fun, cool things with their abilities and yada yada. I do think that is an aspect, and I only tell it to you because of personal experience. When you're playing a control deck and they see something and they're just like, oh man, this is stupid. Now you still got to play the game, and there is an extra like excitement, I think, when they beat you.
Sure.
And I'll say, NAIC 2018, it might have been 2018. I was on Sylveon control. It was winning in to get to day 2. And I'm up against a Buzzhole Lycanroc kid. And he was so freaking excited and he was like frustrated that I was playing this deck. Every time I hit a Crushing Hammer, he would just be upset. And when he got the donk on me and it was like game 3, kid was like in my face and just was so pumped. Like, and I think he was excited that he won clearly, but I think there was an aspect of like, screw you, Sylveon player. So I think here Ian is like giving it to Cifuentes and Iron Thorns. Like, I think he knew what he meant. I think he was like, screw you for trying to play this deck, and I still won. Like, and it wasn't even close. Like I said, like he dominated. Ian dominated. It was a 2-0. Yeah. It wasn't close. And I think he knew exactly what he was doing. And so I think objectively, he meant it towards his opponent. I do. I think he meant it towards his opponent.
I agree that there is some objective excitement at the end, but I'm purely talking about what that motion means. Like,
and it's an inappropriate motion.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That's why Pokemon is going to defend it. But what if it is the dice roll? What if it is, just a little some excitement? Yeah. At the end of the day, he can't do it, right?
Yeah.
He shouldn't do it. But this brings up an interesting conversation now, in my opinion, about what should be allowed as if it is like a emotional moment after a game for whatever reason, because we've seen a winner this week. Yeah, I think we've all seen this before at some tournaments from a particular player in the Pokemon world. What's his name? JR, I think it is.
JR? I don't know. What are you talking? I don't know.
The guy that when he won his regional, I'll have to go back and dig this up.
JW?
JW.
Yeah.
He gets his little chop in there.
Sure.
Chop is not the same thing as we're talking about here, but to me, I agree. I do think there was some frustration. There was some showmanship about beating a deck that a lot of people, even some of the casters, weren't too excited about seeing at this tournament. But at the end of the day, I think we're both in agreement, regardless of the objective, subjective nature of this, you can't do that.
Because I think
you can't do that.
I think if he had, let's say he doesn't do the gesture, right? But then he gets to the interview and he's so excited and he lets it slip. He's like, oh, I'm like, Ian, how do you feel right now? And he's like, oh, I'm so effing excited. But he says the actual word. And he's like, oops. I don't think they DQ him. I think they're like, whoa, dude, even though that's profanity, it's on a live stream, it's in front of a bunch of kids, he says the F word. I think it's like, dude, you got to calm down. But because this was geared towards the Iron Thorns, not Cifuentes, but Iron Thorns, I think it was directed towards the player, and I think that's why
there's
it had to happen.
even minor unsportsman conduct in Section A of this play. A player swears mildly in annoyance. Like,
sure, yeah, that's
kind of what we're talking about here. Like this stupid deck, blah blah blah. Like, but like to me, it's like he's not given if he gives like Fernando the finger, okay, easy. But there's still like I just wrestle with this because again, this was a subjective call. There's nothing in the rules where I see gestures. I'll do another search
but
here.
You said directed towards another player.
Right.
This is directed towards another player.
If it's part of the inclusion policy, but it wasn't. But the things that are being targeted here under the things are age, disability, gender identity, marital, pregnancy, race, color, nationality, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, education, citizenship, political affiliation. Like that's just a sportsmanship thing. He's not targeting any part of Fernando.
No, but like, read the first thing you read, where it was like that severe unsportsman category, where it said like a slur, something else. Like it was that one. It was that first thing.
The use of profanity, slurs, physical threats, or insults toward another attendee. So I guess you're levying the insult.
3 of the 4. He hit 3 of the 4. Read them one more time. Read them one more time.
Profanity.
Check.
Slurs.
That's a slur. It's a slur.
Physical threats.
Not that one. Well,
or
actually,
insult.
Is an insult.
Or insults towards another attendee.
Towards another attendee. It was an insult towards. He was doing that towards.
Right. If that is your subjective interpretation of what was happening.
Why do you keep using the word subjective? That's what it was.
Because you don't know. Like you heard other people pitching. That's the difference between profanity and any type of gesture. I agree with you. I'm saying like that's what it looked like.
If he flipped the bird, the middle finger, and someone said, well, he might have just had a weird reflex in his finger. Or like he didn't know. Like he just had a weird reflex. Is that subjective or objective?
But that ties to anything. It's like, oh, he said the F word. Like, oh, he didn't. What I'm saying is there's some level. He didn't reach across the table and punch Fernando in the face. That's objective. That is objective. He slugged another player. He said a curse word. Like we don't have insight.
He shot him from the other side of the table.
we don't have insight into what was going into Ian's head when he did that. We can hear his side of the story. Again, you cannot do that. He should not have done that. All I'm saying is there's a level of subjectivity here. We don't know. They made a ruling, and looking at the rule book, the letter of the law, the black and white, I don't see that in the black and white.
I think he hit 3 of the 4 of the bad things you listed, and actually 4 of 4 could be debatable. So
listen, again, I'm with you. I don't disagree with the DQ. What I'm actually way more fired up about is how the tournament proceeded after.
Well, let's talk about that because that was a big deal. That was a very interesting. And before you get into it, I want to say I think this game has grown exponentially over the past 2 years, 3 years, right? Really ever since COVID. And these aren't seasoned. Like when Kyle Sablehouse comes on the podcast, he's an awesome guest and we love Kyle. But these guys haven't been doing this for 20 years.
Right.
And so I think to take in a big event or like a big thing that happened, I think it is hard. But it was I don't know, how much were they being told what they can't talk about too?
I'm sure due to the nature of it, like, again, that's just another point in your favor that I'm saying, like, we're not going to talk about this. Like, I'm sure they were being coached on what to say. But my bigger issue here is this, in my mind, and this is no slight to Fernando, because what was he going to do? Not play? This world's victory has a giant asterisk on it for me. You and I You and I always talk. Yeah, I'm coming in hot here. You better be ready.
Wow, an asterisk.
John, you and I always talk when something's a little amiss in a game, where something is da da da. You know, the win still goes through. It's going to go in the record book. Fernando is the world champion, but this to me has a giant asterisk in it. And again, I love the deck. I'm so happy this deck won. You and we're going to talk about this later this week. But here's how I think this should have played out, and I'm interested to hear your opinion. That DQ had no bearing whatsoever on what happened during the game. Ian Robb 2-0 Fernando. That was the result of the game. After the game concluded, that is where we have the hand gesture and the loss. Jesse should have had a bye. Jesse should have had a bye. No one should have gone on to the next round. Fernando did not win. He was not affected by anything. And I would have liked to seen a third place match, honestly, between the losers of the top four for kind of like a bronze medal situation. I think that could have been an appropriate stream content. But there's no reason I see that Fernando should get to keep competing because he lost the match.
But how is that fair to the other competitors that Jesse just gets a free ride into finals?
There's not okay, let's play it out this way. Fernando loses. Ian then goes into the crowd and commits another unsportsmanlike thing. 20 minutes later.
Okay.
Or he doesn't show up, or something happens, and there's no one then there to play Jesse. The match is concluded. The slip is signed. In my opinion, they got this way wrong. Fernando should not have continued to play in this match. Again, I'm not mad at him that he continued. He was told, hey, you're going to get another shot for Worlds. I would have still been playing. You would have still been playing. I'm not mad at him whatsoever. I just, in my own personal opinion, don't think he should still have been a part of the process. I think we see Jesse in the finals. I think we see a much different finals match. And I think everyone... the last two competitors that Fernando beat were kind of robbed, in my opinion.
So I hear that, and that there's some validity there. And can I give you a what if? Because I don't know what I'm about to say is true. But what if Ian had been not to the extent of the gesture, but during the match, kind of like breadcrumbs of this, man, dude, Cifuentes does something, and Ian's like, wow, man, it's here comes the trash deck. Unlucky. I'm feeling unlucky here. What if there were just little things that necessarily weren't enough to get DQ'd, but were a part of the bigger picture of then the gesture? And so then they just considered it hey, sure, you've been doing this all match, so we're just DQing you now, and we're moving Cifuentes on because this all started during the games. Not Absolutely. Just after the slip was signed. It was building up to this.
Sure.
What would you say to that? Would it be okay then to move him on?
Yeah, I think because in my mind, that's in the middle of the game, right? If the DQ happens in the midst of the game, well, that's in the midst of the game. We don't know the final outcome. Then Fernando should continue on, but he lost.
No, but I'm not saying it happened during the match. I'm saying that the makings of it started during the match, and then the big conclusion happened after the match. But because there was bits and parts of it, it was starting to simmer during the whole game, that's why it counted as the whole match is thrown out and Fernando moves on.
You would have to prove to me that it was affecting the game state or the players, it was affecting Fernando's ability to play, and that there's some evidence of this. Otherwise, it's I don't know. The game got played cleanly. There were no errors in the game. So in my mind, the person that should be most frustrated, in my opinion, is Jesse. And I'm sure he has his own thoughts on there, but he now drew into a matchup that is terrible for him. He played his guts out in that match and lost. And I mean, Fernando played and won. And then, as we know, won in the finals as well. Congratulations. He's the champion. But in my book, he's an asterisk champion.
You could say that. I won't argue the asterisk champion, but I do think you have to conclude the whole darn thing. And that means getting off the stage before you make some sort of mistake that DQs you. And even though that match was over, the slip wasn't signed yet when he did the gesture. I was going to do it, but the gesture. So the match, it was still it's like, it's the follow through. And yes, they signed it and then he gets interviewed, but all of that doesn't matter. It's the fact that he did it before this thing was really wrapped up. And I think that's why it's like when you're playing basketball and you're driving down the lane and you give a nice little floater and it goes through the hoop, but then your momentum takes you into the defender. And if it's a charge, it's a charge, and that bucket didn't count. And it's like, what? Like, it already went through the hoop, and then I committed the charge. It's like, doesn't matter. Like, because you started your motion, and then the ball went through. And I think that he has to finish it out. He did not get off the stage.
But in my opinion, it's different because we have to categorize sportsmanship penalties versus like in-game penalties, which is what you're talking about. To me, this is like, the clock runs out and, then there's some huge celebration, maybe on like the opposing team's center court, center field mascot. And what should be happened is, okay, yeah, maybe you want to DQ them or fine them, but like, should the team that just get beat continue on? I just think like, no, they got beat. Get them out of there.
What about from a content and organizing perspective? Don't you want to have another match?
No, and that's what I'm saying. What I would have liked to have seen is and they do this all the time, and this is what was frustrating to me. All the time we see, let's watch the casters play an old format. They should, in my opinion, they should have scrambled. They should have gone and gotten Fernando, and I forget who was the other top four, who lost in the other top four. Get them together. Hey, we're going to have a third place match. Figure something out. Figure something out. Maybe they want to play. Maybe they don't want to play. But I just don't see the spirit of competition here where someone gets beat, something happens afterwards, and, now there's no competitor. That's not fair to Jesse. In what world is that fair to Jesse?
Well, let me ask you a question. Okay. You're probably right. Let's say we go with your method, right? And then Jesse wins. Asterisk for Jesse, too, right?
And Jesse beats Fernando?
No.
You're saying he gets the bye.
He gets the bye. So Ian's disqualified. Fernando lost. So Jesse just goes to the finals.
I think there's always. I don't know that it's degrees of asterisk.
No, there's no degrees.
But it's outside of his control.
So
it's outside of his control.
So is Cifuentes. That's out of his control too.
And agree. That's what I'm saying. I don't disagree him for Cifuentes going and playing. You would play. I would play. I would get to the end. And that's the thing. Like, I think Fernando is going to hear people like me potentially. I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm just trying to give you my opinion on the thing. Again, love the player, love the deck. Glad that he came home with the W. In my opinion, he just doesn't deserve to continue in the competition.
And that's fine. I get that. He lost. But I'm just saying, if you're going to now give Cifuentes an asterisk, which you're giving him, if Parker goes on to win and he got a bye, he asterisks 100% because he didn't have an opponent.
I guess, but it's in my opinion, it's like a different asterisk. It's like, yes, you didn't have to play a match. There wasn't somebody there for you to play, but that in my mind is more forgivable than this.
But Cifuentes had to go through Parker and the Japanese player that I'm blanking. I was practicing saying his name and now I forgot how to say it. He had to go through two people to win, and you're going to give that poor kid an asterisk. But Parker gets to just play a finals and win, and he doesn't get an asterisk.
It's a fine win. Like, he beat an undefeated player, and then he beat the surprise deck of the top 8. It doesn't take away the accolades of what he went through, but he shouldn't have been there. He lost. Like, it's in my mind, it's like all imaginary nonsense because he shouldn't be there.
I think I will say that there will always be an asterisk. I will agree with you. There will. But he still had to beat the other two players in
Yeah,
order to win the
I agree.
championship.
He is the champion. I'm not disputing. I'm not here saying take away the championship.
Yeah.
I'm saying giant asterisk next to that win. Like when we go back to that, it's I mean, I would, because this is it, I would be wrestling with it too. If you're a true competitor, Cory, and you are a true competitor, I know this,
Yeah.
you lost. You got 2-0'd in top 8.
Yeah. What kind of like kahunas would you have to be like, no, I lost. I'm not going. And they're like, no, we're going to let you. And no, I don't deserve it.
I
Like
think
he could have.
I'm not saying he should have. I think some people would. But that's the other thing. There's money on the line now, Cory. There's a lot of money on the line. This is not just competitive. Like, yeah, I'll jump back in the competition and make thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think, okay, jump back to your asterisks label. I think the whole thing gets an asterisk.
I agree.
The whole tournament, no matter who would have won, no matter if the Japanese player had won, if Parker had won, if Wolf, the guy from Israel, Wolf had won, all of them. It throws the whole thing off because now you can't play it out the way that it would have played out. So they ruined it for everybody.
Well, I agree, and that's what it is. That's what's so unfortunate about this is one person's actions have now marred. Fernando did nothing wrong. I like. Hear me saying I'm coming off like I'm belittling his win. I'm not. No. I'm simply saying the way that, in my opinion, the tournament should have played out, he shouldn't have been allowed to continue to play either. He won 2 amazing matches in 3-game sets that were so much fun to watch, and he played his heart out, deserves the win that he got. There's going to be an asterisk here. I'm not going to be the only person saying this. Like, I'm always going to personally believe you got the one, but you shouldn't have been allowed to. You shouldn't have been in the top 4. You shouldn't have been in there. You should. I would have continued playing too. I don't think you should have been there.
Yeah. Well, he played well. He beat a deck in the finals that he should have lost to. He had really no business beating that Roaring Moon deck, and the way that he maneuvered around, boss order, hitting the heads on the counter catchers, all that stuff. He played it really well. I mean. It's like if he had hit Lugia, I probably would have been like, oh man, come on. Come on, Cifuentes. Like you were handed the win. But like in the Miraidon, it's not like completely it shuts down a lot of what Miraidon wants to do, but you can still Electro Generator. Like you can still do things on Miraidon, and Jesse's a good enough player to maneuver and get around that. He had 3 generators prize game 3. I mean, so it's like, what do you do? So it's not like this just steamrolled it one way or another. He got his win. He'll be a world champion, but this will always be talked about because especially in the time that we're in with the amount of people that watch this, we posted about this video last night. Everyone's posting about this. Like, and Ian is a prominent U.S. player. Like he is someone that's well known. He's won regionals before. He's always been in the mix. Like, and to do it to him was a very, very like poke. I think if this wasn't Worlds, they probably would have let it slide. But because it's Worlds, all the eyeballs on it, Pokémon International, they had to do it. They had to do it.
And honestly, I think that's. When I look through the rule book, and again, I don't see the word for word about how the tournament proceeds after something like this. I'm sure there was a lot of internal discussions about the call that they made to DQ, and then what happens to the tournament moving forward.
Yeah.
And I don't see that. Maybe there's more. And if we're missing something, if I'm missing something, if I've misspoke, I apologize. I will very easily take back what I'm saying. But
yeah, no, it's because like it takes more, I'll say guts or courage, whatever you want to call it, from Pokémon International to DQ him in that way than it would have been to let him keep playing.
Agreed. I don't agree with that.
I don't think anybody would have. I think people would have said that was very inappropriate. And then you know what? They could have said after the tournament, Ian Robb has been suspended for 6 months or something. Like they've done that. They've done that with a senior, very prominent senior player. They've done that with other Masters players, where if it's based on a conduct deal, they've done it after the tournament and then suspended the player. But they've let them finish a tournament. So I think it took more. They really must have. Maybe we are missing something here, but like, wow, for them to like do that in that moment was very, very ballsy.
I agree. The only thing I don't like, and I don't know that this could have been controlled or factored in my mind, if what you're saying earlier, like the play continues, then it should have been frozen right there. Right? Like they do every other type of penalty. I don't like that it was over. Ian thinks he's won. He's moving on. He goes to the interview. And then later, this is laid down behind the scenes and everything comes apart. Like, if it really is what you're saying, then I feel like it needs to be dealt with very quickly.
I think, and this is all assumption, but
right, it's all hearsay.
I think producer, and they're all in the truck, wherever they're at, they see it happen. They're like, oh my gosh, did he just do that? They're all looking at each other. Did he just do that? And they're like, I don't know. Did he? What's happening? And it's going on, and he's going to get interviewed, okay? And then I bet you about 10 minutes later, they get a call from Mr. The guy that spoke at the beginning. That's like the head honcho, because some sponsor or some Nintendo or somebody was like, did you just see what happened? And then the CEO gets on the phone, calls the production manager, and then so it just takes 20 minutes but it was the repercussion. I bet you people were complaining. I bet it upset certain stakeholders, and it trickled down. And then, this is a Japanese company. They wanted to pave the way for Roaring Moon to win this thing. So they said, get him out of there. Get him out. Get him out, and let's get Iron Thorns in. And that's and you know what? It didn't matter, Jared. It didn't matter. He still didn't win. So yeah, craziest. I have just never watching it live. I couldn't believe it was happening. And then just the way the announcers could not talk about it was just like very awkward.
Yeah, there wasn't even a graphic for the bracket. It was Fernando 2-0, and I had to go back.
Yeah,
I was like, I swore, and I was worried that I was getting things mixed up because Ian was the very first match of the tournament. No. Robin was the very first. I'm completing.
Oh, you're talking about the whole tournament.
Yeah, the whole tournament. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I had to go back and be like, no, Ian won that 2-0. But again, I think the biggest thing here, and you brought this up, this is an asterisk on the entire tournament, not just Fernando's win, not just how it played out and mixed things up. Like, this just isn't good for a game that was growing in popularity. I'm with you. I'm glad that Pokemon dealt with it as quickly as they could, and that it took courage to make a move like this.
Yeah.
Wild.
It just shows you where their priorities are. And the competitive game is not a priority. It's a very cool little thing that Pokemon gets to put on, and they love the publicity and the marketing behind all of it. And but this is not this to affect their bottom line, Jared. This is not a big deal for them. They need to sell packs. They need the video game to be bought. They need the licensing. Like, all of those things is where they make the money, and not here. And so they just don't say they don't care, but they're just not like, to get this really right is not a priority. And I think they're just trying to get through it with the least amount of damage done to the overall audience and target demographic for 100%. Pokemon. Could care less. They could care less what Ian Robb or a lot of our competitive content creators or the scene really think, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter. They don't care.
Absolutely. Yep. They'll protect the brand.
Protect the shield. Protect the shield. The ball.
It is,
protect
man.
The ball.
I will say it again. Demonstrates a blatant disregard for standards of conduct and actively contributes toward the disruption of a safe and what's the 2-word phrase right there, Corey?
Family friendly
environment. Yeah. And is why Pokemon is the largest media brand of all time is because they have spanned generations and continue to reach out to family-friendly environments.
Yeah.
And it's working. And they made the right call, whether you want to call it a moral call. They definitely made the correct organizational call.
They made the correct organizational call. It's an esport. It's as weird as it is to call it that, but it's like an esport. But it's a growing one, especially for Pokemon and the amount of popularity this thing has picked up. And so I just think they just started upping the production value of these tournaments. Like they don't even have a similar format across the world as far as how everyone plays. So they're learning this and they're getting there. And I bet you if they cared more and put more money and resources into it, then they would have had better protocol for if something like this happens. And what do you do to ensure the quality of the tournament and that the right people win? But I think I like that Jesse still had to play. I know it felt weird, but I just like, if this was Lugia, would anybody have cared? Because he would have just steamrolled him. It would have been 2-0. But because Jesse lost, then it's a whole kit and caboodle, whatever you want to call
it. I just don't think Jesse, like, again, if in my mind, this is after the fact. If this had happened 20 minutes afterwards and Robin disappears if Ian punches somebody in the face, then would Fernando then come back and be a replacement after the loss? It just like Jesse, and I'm coming more around to seeing your view about like, yes, Jesse gets a bye because of something out of his control. He has one last match to play. There is an asterisk there as well. It's just a loss for everyone.
Nobody wins.
Nobody wins. But here's what I would like. I would love to hear our followers' thoughts on this in the comment section.
Yeah.
We would love to get in a conversation with you about this. I'm not saying that I am the definitive right answer about this. I don't think Cory is. We're here having this conversation, trying to figure it out, throwing our thoughts and feelings in this. We would love to hear your thoughts and feelings. Leave a comment. If you hate us, let us know. We'll accept some hate as well for our strong opinions.
Love us or hate us. We're right. I mean, we're usually right. Like, so I don't know what the problem is.
Goodness.
Anyway, Ian, I hope to see you in Louisville. I'll give you a good handshake. Maybe. But, crazy, Jared. But congrats to Cifuentes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fernando, congrats to me for winning our bet. Thank you. Raul, I appreciate you. Good job. And Mark. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about it.
Be sure to tune in later this week. We will have a very long, very in-depth coverage of everything that went down at Worlds. We will not be discussing this anymore. We wanted to cover it, have a conversation with people that wanted to have a conversation about it, and leave it forward and really look at all of the amazing decks and players and competitive things that went down. Check us out on our usual release date later this week. Subscribe. Hit a button below. Show us some love. We're really close to 1K. And Cory, we will catch you later.
I'll catch you later, and maybe I'll have air conditioning next time. So